In August 2018, 4,000 mathematicians from around the globe had gathered in Rio de Janeiro for a ritual that occurred only once every 4 years. The International Congress of Mathematicians was the center of their universe. It is the biggest and most awaited gathering of mathematicians globally. Among the crowd stood a man named Caucher Birkar. He was 40 years old, he wore a dark suit and a white shirt. His face was framed by short dark hair and a neatly trimmed beard. He looked calm. He did not look like a man who had spent his childhood dodging artillery fire in the Zagros Mountains. He did not look like a refugee who had once arrived in Britain with nothing but the clothes and a mind full of numbers. He was here to receive the highest honor in mathematics, the Fields Medal. While frequently likened to the Nobel Prize, the Fields Medal is distinct from its counterpart in key ways. Unlike the Nobel, which is presented annually and recognizes a lifetime of achievement, the Fields Medal is awarded only every 4 years. Crucially, the Fields Medal is a prize for younger mathematicians, honoring work completed before the age of 40, thus recognizing potential rather than a full career. It is considered harder to win than the Nobel, because it not only has to be won 40, but there can only be 4 winners every 4 years. In contrast, the Nobel Prize for Physics in the same period can be won by up to 12 people. Birkar walked onto the stage. He accepted the gold medal. It was 14 carats of solid gold and weighed 169 grams. On one side was the profile of Archimedes. On the other was an inscription in Latin that translated to rise above one's spirit and to grasp the world. He held it in his hand. He looked at the audience. He spoke of his people. He said he hoped the news would put a smile on the faces of 40 million Kurds. The odds of a child born on a subsistence farm in war-torn Iran becoming a professor at Cambridge were infinitesimal. The odds of that same child solving the boundedness of Fano varieties were even smaller. Caucher Birkar had beaten the odds. As he walked off the stage, the crush of well-wishers began. People wanted to shake his hand and take photographs. They wanted to touch the man who had tamed the infinite zoo of algebraic equations. Caucher Birkar needed a place for his things. He had a briefcase containing his wallet and mobile phone. He put the heavy gold medal inside the bag, which he then set on a table in the pavilion. He then turned to acknowledge the congratulations of his colleagues. He was distracted for only a moment, perhaps a minute or even less. When he turned back, the table was empty. The briefcase was gone. A thorough search was conducted, spanning the pavilion and the surrounding grounds. The security team eventually located the briefcase, which had been abandoned under a bench in a nearby pavilion. The thief had stolen the wallet, the phone, and, most significantly, the medal. To understand the man, you must understand the land. Marivan is a county in the Kurdistan province of western Iran. It is a place of jagged beauty. The Zagros Mountains rise up like the spine of the earth. The air is thin and clear. The winters are harsh. The summers are dry. It is a land that has been fought over for centuries. Fereydoun Derakhshani was born here in July 1978. He would not become Caucher Birkar for another 22 years. In 1978, he was simply Fereydoun. He was the third of 6 children born to Majid and Sakina Derakhshani. In 1978, the streets of Tehran were burning with the fires of revolution. By 1979, the Shah was gone, and the Islamic Republic was born. By 1980, the armies of Saddam Hussein poured across the border from Iraq. Marivan lay directly on that border. The war that followed lasted 8 years. It was a grinding, senseless conflict that recalled the trenches of the First World War. It was fought with artillery, mustard gas, and waves of young men sent to die in the minefields. The family lived on a farm in the village of Ney. It was a subsistence existence. They did not buy their food, but grew it. They cultivated the land, planting wheat in the rocky ground, rice in the paddies, and various vegetables. Their livestock included cows, kept for both milk and meat, and a horse was used for demanding farm work. This self-sufficiency was their salvation. The Iranian economy collapsed under the weight of sanctions and war spending. In the cities, people waited in long lines for rationed bread. On the farm, the Derakhshanis baked their own. But the farm could not protect them from the violence. The village of Ney was an easy target for Iraqi gunners. The border was so close that the shelling was routine. Fereydoun grew up with the rhythm of bombardment. He learned the difference between the sound of a shell leaving a barrel and the sound of it landing. He learned to run for cover. School was a sporadic luxury. The education system in the Kurdish region was crumbling. Teachers were scarce. Supplies were non-existent. The curriculum was often interrupted by the wail of sirens. It was a chaotic time. It was a time when survival was the only subject that really mattered. "My city is right on the border," he would later explain. "You can imagine we were an easy target. The threat was always everywhere." Most children in such an environment shut down. They narrow their world to the immediate necessities of food and safety. They stop asking questions because the answers are too terrifying. Fereydoun did the opposite. He opened up. He found an escape hatch. His father Majid had only attended school for a few years. His mother Sakina had never attended school at all. Yet they possessed a respect for learning that is common among people who have been denied it. They did not push their children. They simply let them be. They created a space in the chaos where curiosity could breathe. The guide into this new world was his older brother, Haydar. Fereydoun's older brother, Haydar Derakhshani, was 6 years his senior and the first true scholar in the family. However, his passion extended beyond academics. He was a natural tinkerer and inventor. Haydar saw potential in simple objects, like turning a piece of paper into a parachute. He created toys for the other children, and even sold his paper parachutes in the village. When Fereydoun was in the 5th grade, Haydar decided to teach him mathematics. He brought home his high school textbooks. He taught it as a game. "He taught me to learn maths for the fun of it rather than passing exams," Birkar said later. "He is probably the person who had the most influence on my education." The lessons took place in the evenings. The brothers would sit together. Outside the night might be lit by the flashes of artillery. Mathematics became a sanctuary. If you followed the rules of logic, you would always get the right answer. The world outside made no sense. The world inside, the books made perfect sense. By the time Fereydoun reached middle school, he was devouring everything he could find. He had exhausted Haydar's knowledge. He needed more. He went to the library in Maravan. It was a modest collection of books, but for Fereydoun it was the Library of Alexandria. He walked the aisles. He pulled books from the shelves. He found biographies of the great mathematicians. He read about men who lived in different centuries in different countries. He read about the beauty of pure reason. He read a book titled Men of Mathematics. He read What is Mathematics? He read late into the night. To escape the silence or the sound of conflict, he played music, specifically the Kurdish melodies of his people. These sounds accompanied him on his journey into the abstract realms of geometry. He began to realize something important. Reading was not enough. Solving the problems in the back of the book was not enough. He did not just want to be a spectator. He wanted to be a player. "I read all these books, and I had the feeling that just reading things is not enough," he said. "I also wanted to create my own stuff, to create something new." Following the end of the war in 1988, Fereydoun completed high school, ready to move from the village to the city.
I was born in the summer of 1978. That was just before the revolution, the Iranian revolution. So even before the revolution, the situation was not very peaceful.
The University of Tehran is the oldest and most prestigious modern university in Iran. In the late 1990s, it was a place of intense intellectual ferment. The country was changing. A reformist movement was bubbling under the surface. Students were reading philosophy and debating politics. Fereydoun arrived in Tehran as a young man from the provinces. He was a Kurd in a Persian city. He was a Sunni in a Shia state. But in the mathematics department, he found a tribe that did not care about ethnicity or sect. He was a formidable student whose rapid absorption of the curriculum astonished his professors. Progressing from calculus to algebra and then to geometry, he soon discerned the profound links between these areas. In 2000, he entered his final year as an undergraduate. The university selected a team to send to the International Mathematics Competition for university students. The competition was held in London. Fereydoun was on the team. His journey to the UK marked his first experience in the West, where he competed against the top young minds from across Europe and Asia. He didn't just compete, he secured the third prize. But the trip to London was about more than a competition. It was an opportunity. Fereydoun knew that his future in Iran was limited. The political situation for Kurds was deteriorating. The state viewed Kurdish identity as a threat to national unity. Activists were being arrested. The language was marginalized. To be a Kurd was to live under a glass ceiling that was slowly lowering. He had a choice to make. He could return to Tehran. He could finish his degree. He could try to find a job in a system that was rigged against him, or he could jump. He looked at the gray skies of England. He looked at the freedom of the universities. He made his decision. He was not going back. The British asylum system is a machine designed to grind down hope. Fereydoun Derakhshani entered this machine in 2000. He applied for political asylum. He was 22 years old. He had no money. He spoke very little English. He had left his family, including Haidar, behind. The Home Office sent him to Nottingham. It is a city in the East Midlands known for the legend of Robin Hood and its lace industry. To Fereydoun, it was a cold and alien landscape. He was placed in housing for asylum seekers. He was given a meager allowance and told to wait. He spent his days waiting for a letter that would tell him if he could stay or if he would be sent back. The uncertainty was a different kind of torture than the artillery fire of his childhood. But Fereydoun had a survival mechanism. He had mathematics. He walked to the University of Nottingham. He found the School of Mathematical Sciences. He walked in. He did not have an appointment. He did not have a transcript. He asked to speak to a professor. He was directed to Ivan Fasenko. Fasenko, a Russian professor of pure mathematics and a number theorist, possessed a keen eye for talent. He observed the young Iranian refugee in his office. Though the young man struggled with broken English, the language barrier vanished the moment he began writing equations. Fasenko listened. He saw the intensity in Fereydoun's eyes and saw the raw intelligence. Fasenko made a decision that changed Fereydoun's life. He simply said yes. "I thought I should give him a chance," Fasenko recalled. Fereydoun immersed himself in his studies. Attending seminars and reading academic papers, he found a sense of belonging within the mathematics department, which became his haven. While he was an asylum seeker outside the campus gates, inside the university he was simply a mathematician. It was during this time that he decided to change his name. Fereydoun Derakhshani was the name of a boy in Iran. It was a name tied to a past he could not return to. He wanted a name that reflected his reality. He wanted a name that honored his Kurdish roots. He chose Caucher. In Kurdish, it means migrant, traveler, or a nomad. It evokes the image of the shepherds who move their flocks across the Zagros Mountains. He chose Birkar. In Kurdish, it means mathematician. It literally translates to thinker, or one who works with the mind. I changed my name to Caucher Birkar because I wanted it to reflect my personality, he said. It symbolized a person voyaging through mathematics. The asylum claim was eventually granted. The waiting was over. Now the work could begin. Caucher Birkar began his PhD at the University of Nottingham in 2001. He was officially supervised by Fasenko, but his interests were drifting. Fasenko was a number theorist. Birkar was drawn to the visual power of geometry. Fasenko was wise enough to let him go. He encouraged Birkar to look elsewhere and attend conferences. In 2002, Birkar traveled to Cambridge for a conference. There he met Vyacheslav Shokharov. Shokharov was a legend. He was a Russian mathematician based at Johns Hopkins University in Baltimore. He was one of the grandmasters of birational geometry. He was a man who saw shapes and dimensions that other people could not even imagine. Birkar introduced himself. Shoukarov saw something in the young Kurd. He saw a shy and decent young man with a terrifying capacity for abstraction. They bonded. Shoukarov invited Birkar to Baltimore. They went skiing together. Birkar had never skied before, but he had the balance of a mountain boy. He picked it up instantly. Shoukarov realized that Birkar's mind worked the same way. It was agile. Shoukarov became his unofficial mentor. He introduced Birkar to the great project of modern algebraic geometry called the Minimal Model Program. To understand what this means, we must step into the infinite zoo. Algebraic geometry is the study of shapes defined by equations. A circle is x squared plus y squared equals 1. A sphere is x squared plus y squared plus z squared equals 1. These are simple. But equations can get very complicated. They can have 100 variables and define shapes in 100 dimensions. These shapes are called algebraic varieties. Mathematicians seek to bring order to the apparent chaos of algebraic forms. With an infinite number of possible equations, there is an equally infinite array of varieties. Just as biologists classify animals and chemists organize elements, algebraic geometers strive to classify these varieties, driven by an aversion to this inherent complexity and disorder. The tool they use is birational geometry. The idea is simple. If you can bend and stretch and cut and paste one shape into another shape without tearing it too much, then they are birationally equivalent. They belong to the same family. The Minimal Model Program, or MMP, is a procedure. It is like an algorithm. You take a messy, complicated shape and you run it through the program. The program tries to smooth out the kinks. It tries to reduce the shape to its simplest possible form, its minimal model. If you can do this for every shape, then you can classify the entire universe of geometry. But there was a problem. The program didn't always work. There were certain shapes that were stubborn. There were shapes that defied classification. One specific class of shapes was called Fano varieties. They were named after the Italian mathematician Gino Fano. These are shapes that have positive curvature. Fano varieties are the building blocks of the geometric universe. Mathematicians suspected that Fano varieties were special. They suspected that even though there were infinitely many of them, they were actually quite limited. They suspected that they belonged to a finite number of families. This idea was called boundedness. The BAB Conjecture, named after Alexeyev Borisov, stated that Fano varieties are bounded. If it was true, it meant that the infinite zoo was actually a tidy garden, but nobody could prove it. It stood as a wall in the field for decades. The greatest minds had thrown themselves against it and bounced off. Caucher Birkar looked at the wall and decided he was going to climb it. He immersed himself in his work with fierce concentration, living largely within his own thoughts. His days were spent in deep contemplation, whether in his Cambridge office or his garden, often with a cup of tea and music playing. He was visualizing dimensions beyond our physical reality. In 2010, he made his first major breakthrough. He collaborated with 3 other mathematicians, Paolo Cassini, Christopher Haken, and James McKernan. They wrote a paper known as BCHM, based on their initials. It was a monster. It proved the existence of minimal models for a huge class of varieties. It was a revolution. It won the AMS Moore Prize. It cemented Birkar's reputation as a star. But he was not done. The Fano varieties were still waiting. He worked alone and on weekends. He worked while his son Fasenko played in the next room. He chipped away at the problem. He found a new angle, a way to use the singularities, the sharp points on the shapes, to control the geometry. In 2016, he published 2 papers. The titles were Technical, Singularities of Linear Systems and Boundedness of Fano Varieties. The content was explosive. He had done it. He had proved the BAB Conjecture. He had proved that Fano varieties are bounded. He showed that you could define this infinite array of equations with a finite number of characteristics. He had built a fence around infinity. Caucher Birkar, who had just turned 40 and was therefore still eligible for the Fields Medal, received the news in an email from the International Mathematical Union that he had been selected for the honor. Keeping the news a secret, he informed only his wife and his family in Iran. In his hometown of Yerevan, the news that the farm boy had won the Nobel of Math spread rapidly. For the Kurdish people, who are accustomed to disheartening news of betrayal and border restrictions, this achievement sparked a rare and genuine sense of pure joy. On the 1st of August 2018, Birkar stood on the stage in Rio. He received the medal. He made his speech. War-ridden Kurdistan was an unlikely place for a kid to develop an interest in mathematics, he told the audience. He dedicated the award to his people. He was conscious of the symbol he had become. He was not just a mathematician. He was a Kurdish mathematician. He was a refugee mathematician. He was proof that talent is distributed equally, even if opportunity is not. Then came the theft. When Birkar realized the medal was gone, he felt a sinking sensation. It was not about the money. The gold was worth about $4,000. That was a significant sum, but it was replaceable. The medal was unique. It was the physical manifestation of 30 years of work. The organizers were mortified. The International Mathematical Union issued a statement of profound regret. The Rio police opened an investigation. They analyzed the CCTV footage. They identified 2 suspects. They found the empty briefcase under a bench, but the medal was gone. The IMU decided that they would not let the thief have the last word. They cast a new medal. 3 days later, on the 4th of August 2018, a special ceremony was held at the closing of the Congress. The organizers presented Caucher Birkar with a replacement medal. Birkar smiled. He held up the new medal. He made a joke how he was becoming famous because he was the only person in history to receive the Fields Medal twice. He is now a celebrity in the scientific world. He has been invited to give talks in Tokyo, Paris, and New York. He was elected a Fellow of the Royal Society. But at home, he is still the farmer's son. He found a deep connection to his roots through gardening, a passion he inherited from his parents. Hours were spent in his backyard, tending the soil and cultivating vegetables. This physical labor offered him a sense of grounding. His family life is a microcosm of the globalized world. His wife is from Thailand. His son Fasenko is growing up in England. My son speaks Thai with his mother and Kurdish with me, Birkar said, and English at school. He established a library in the village of Markaz. It is a small village near his hometown. He funded it himself. He also began to advocate for systemic change. He called on the Kurdistan regional government to invest in science. He proposed an organization to support gifted Kurdish students. He wanted to build a pipeline that would allow the next Haidar or the next Fereydoun to flourish without having to flee. I really want to help people in less privileged locations and countries, he said, especially in the case of Kurds. In 2021, he accepted a position as a professor at Tsinghua University in Beijing. He chose to join the Yale Mathematical Sciences Center, attracted by its dynamic atmosphere and substantial resources. China was channeling billions into fundamental science, constructing a new foundation for mathematical research. Furthermore, the students were a key factor. During his lectures at Tsinghua, Birkar encountered students who were intensely motivated and eager to learn, qualities that resonated with his own spirit. He keeps his ties to the UK. He remained an honorary professor at Nottingham. In Beijing, he continues his work on the Minimal Model program. But his daily life was now in the shadow of the Great Wall rather than the spires of King's College.